ओमज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरों श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we'll continue from where we left. We are in the third sloka of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this is Arjuna is in complete dilemma, and then he is he spoke all his opinions and all his different reasons why he cannot fight the battle, and then he's now he's silent, and now Krishna spoke, and the first opening sloka, the second sloka that we saw, that Sri Bhagavan Vacha, right? And then he was scolding Arjuna that no, you're not, what is it, speaking like an Aryan. You're not speaking like a civilized man. A civilized man should not be speaking or lamenting for the body and things like that, right? So he is chastising, he's kind of giving that kind of comments. And let's see, like now, how Krishna is going to continue. Text 3. क्लैब्यमास्मगमपार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप. Okay. He's telling, O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of enemy. Purport. Arjuna was addressed as the son of Pritha, who happened to be the sister of Krishna's father Vasudeva. Therefore, Arjuna had a blood relationship with Krishna. If the son of a Kshatriya declines to fight, he is a Kshatriya in name only. And if the son of a Brahmana acts impiously, he is a Brahmana in name only. Such Kshatriyas and Brahmanas are unworthy sons of their fathers. Therefore, Krishna did not want Arjuna to become an unworthy son of a Kshatriya. Arjuna was the most intimate friend of Krishna, and Krishna was directly guiding him on the chariot. But in spite of all these credits, if Arjuna abandoned the battle, he would be committing an infamous act. Therefore, Krishna said that such an attitude in Arjuna did not fit his personality. Arjuna might argue that he would give up the battle on the grounds of his magnanimous attitude for the most respectable Bhishma and his relatives, but Krishna considered that sort of magnanimity mere weakness of heart. Such false magnanimity was not approved by any authority. Therefore, such magnanimity or so called non violence should be given up by persons like Arjuna under the direct guidance of Krishna. So, Prabhupada often he used to criticize about this aspect of non-violence. In our India, like that was a very big this one non-violence movement and things like that. So, but then it is not very much appreciated by the Lord. So, are we attached to the devotional service of the Lord, or are we attached to some moral principles? So, non-violence is not uh, not a solution. No, Krishna himself perfectly, personally inducing the violence here. So even in our own home, in our own day-to-day activities, we cannot expect to be non-violent all the time. If somebody, if our dependents, if they are going off track, So sometimes we may have to become violent, and that is necessary. So it is not no this the principle of non-violence is not that a great principle, which can come replacing the aspect of bhakti or replacing the aspect of other higher principles and things like that, right? So here, especially for a kshatriya, he is not expected to be non-violent. He's not expected to be non-violent. For a brahmana, non-violence is a very important principle, not for a kshatriya, right? So here, Arjuna is trying to act in this kind of confused way, and Krishna is telling this is not proper, this is not expected out of you. Text 4. Arjuna uvacha katam bhishmam aham sankhye dronam cha madhusudana isubhihi pratiyotsyami pujarha varisudana. Okay, so Arjuna is telling katam bhishmam, like, how will I be able to, kill Bhishma and Drona? No, it's very, very difficult. Arjuna said, O killer of enemies, Arisudana. Ari means like enemy. Arisudana means killer of enemies. And O killer of Madhusudana, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? So I must offer flowers and I must offer worship to these personalities. How will I be able to offer arrows to them? So, and there is another catch is there here. Arjuna is telling that you are known as the killer of enemies, but you are asking me to kill my family members. No, what is this? So that's what he is asking. The purport. Respectable superiors like Bhishma, the grandfather, and Dronacharya, the teacher, are always worshipable. Even if they attack, they should not be counterattacked. It is general etiquette that superiors are not to be offered even a verbal fight. Even if they are sometimes harsh in behavior, they should not be harshly treated. Then, how is it possible for Arjuna to counterattack them? Would Krishna ever attack his own grandfather, Ugrasen, or his teacher Sandipani Muni? These were some of the arguments offered by Arjuna to Krishna. So, like Arjuna is asking, like, will you ever do this thing to your superiors? So, like, you are asking me to kill my grandfather and teacher. So, will you ever do this thing to Ugrasen and Sandipani Muni and people like that? So, why are you asking me to do this thing? So, that's a the argument that Arjuna is putting. And then here's text 5. Guru nahatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktabhaikshamati haloke hatvarda kamanstu guru nihaiva bunjiya bhogan rudira pradigdan. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. So here whole point of Arjuna is that so we are fighting for a kingdom and for a worldly gain, and so if we do it at the cost of the lives of all these people, then it is kind of all that we will earn will be tainted with the blood of these people. So our enjoyment will be tainted. So he is completely focused on the enjoyment that he is going to have after the battle. Okay, purport. According to scriptural codes, a teacher who engages in an abominable action and has lost his sense of discrimination is fit to be abandoned. Bhishma and Drona were obliged to take the sides of Duryodhana because of his financial assistance, although they should not have accepted such a position simply on financial considerations. Under the circumstances, they have lost the respectability of teachers. But Arjuna thinks that nevertheless they remain his superiors, and therefore to enjoy material profits after killing them would mean to enjoy spoils tainted with blood. Okay. Just a minute, I'll just close the window and come. There's too much of noise over here. Okay. So text 6. Nachaitad vidma kataranno gariyo yadva jayema yadivana jayeyu. यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामस्तेव स्थिता प्रमुखे दादराष्ट्राः. Okay. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. Purport. Arjuna did not know whether he should fight and risk unnecessary violence, although fighting is the duty of a Kshatriyas, or whether he should refrain and live by begging. Okay, so now we see that Arjuna seemingly gave so many different arguments and things like that towards the end of first chapter, and also now also he is giving so many arguments. But then if we see his, he doesn't have a conclusive state of existence or a conclusive state of mind. He is not saying, okay, because of all these arguments, this is the thing which I'm going to do. He's not able to come to a conclusion. He is completely disturbed, and he's not able to no corner down or boil down to one single um, course of action. So he is completely confused. So that's the point here. So if we are not oriented properly, if we are not clear, we may have many solid and valid arguments, but then we will not come to a conclusion. No, that's a very important point. If we don't come to a conclusion, it's constant disturbance. No, we will never be able to be at peace. Right. So that's the point. That's the problem that Arjuna is facing here. Right. Okay. So if he did not conquer the enemy, begging would be his only means of subsistence, nor was there certainty of victory, because either side might emerge victorious. Even if victory awaited them and their cause was justified, still, if the sons of Dhritarashtra died in battle, it would be very difficult to live in their absence. Under the circumstance, that would be another kind of defeat for them. All these considerations by Arjuna definitely proved that not only was he a great devotee of Lord, but he was also highly enlightened and had complete control over his mind and senses. Okay, as we had discussed, Prabhupada often alternates the purports. No, he in one purport he will say for the Pandavas or for Arjuna, and another purport he will say, oh, like no, this is all because of material. This one. So this would constantly be alternating. So now this is one of the instances like that. And we see this same very argument even Duryodhana also gives. So when he was having a consultation with his own men like Karna, Bhishma, and all other seniors, in the Kaurava side. So when they were having discussion, Duryodhana says that, you see, this battle is very good. I will remain the king till the end of my life. No, if I win, I will remain the king till the end of my life, and I will have all you people, like no, all the great people and the great army and the great council and things like that. So I will have the best of the things. No, I'll have the best of the kingdom with me. And if I die, no, if in the battle, like if we lose, and if I die, still I will die as a king. No, till the end of my life I will be a king. And if we are defeated and if the Pandavas win, they will have very meager people, and they will not have the same Hastinapur, no, which we have now. They will have no kind of a what is that, burial yard, that's all. No, they will have all these people dead and gone, and they will just have some remains of this Hastinapur. So in this way, like I will remain the king and master till the end of my life. No, that's his that's his this one take on it. So it's like quite a amazing viewpoint, right? So Duryodhana had his own this one, and he was thinking that no, I will always be happy, because no, I will enjoy the kingdom till the end of my life, and even if they win, no, they will not have anything to enjoy. No, I would have already destroyed everything, right? So it is like it's like kind of a sadistic kind of an approach, where even if somebody gets something, it should not have any value. Like I'll just destroy its value and I'll give it to them. So that's the mood Duryodhana was having actually. And the very same thing now Arjuna is thinking it in a completely different way. Arjuna is thinking that No, he's still thinking that no, they are my relatives and they're no, they have to be taken care and things like that. And if we win, and if we don't have any of our relatives and friends, no, what's the point? No, that's what he's telling. Anyway, Krishna will smash all these things and say that no, what's this stupid attachment to things of material world, which is anyway going to be taken off, right? So he will get back on this. So as of now, let's continue with the purport. He says, okay, he was truly virtuous, and okay, his desire to live by begging, although he was born in the royal household. Okay, did we read all these things? Okay, yeah, his desire to live by begging, although he was born in the royal household, is another sign of detachment. He was truly virtuous, and as these qualities combined with his faith in the words of instruction of Sri Krishna, his spiritual master, indicate. It is concluded that Arjuna was quite fit for liberation. Unless the senses are controlled, there is no chance of elevation to the platform of knowledge. And without knowledge and devotion, there is no chance of liberation. Arjuna was competent in all these attributes over and above his enormous attributes in his material relationships. Okay. So here we see a very important aspect that's mentioned. Until unless we control our senses, there is no question of liberation. So liberation means what? Liberation means to be freed from all the material contaminations and to get to the spiritual plane. And the major thing where the contamination lies, Krishna in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he will categorically say that this contamination lies on the mind, intelligence, and the senses. So if the senses are not controlled or if the senses are not purified, there is no question of liberation. That's where our bondage lies. And a person should know like how to control this mind, intelligence, and the senses and apply it in the service of the Lord. So if it is not controlled, so then no, he's not going to be what is that? He'll not be able to uh, attain the highest perfection of liberation, right? So generally, when people talk about big things about spirituality and things like that, no, we generally say that no, why not you try to control your senses a little bit, and no, why not you try to focus on the meditation, probably for a half an hour or 1 hour, to start with. And if you can do that, then we can start, talk about some higher forms of spiritual subjects. If we cannot even focus for some bit of time, the mind on the holy name of the Lord, then there is no point about talking about some high funda, no spiritual subjects and things like that. So it's very important that this sense control, and especially that can be that can be tested, or that can be experienced by the way of no constant remembrance of the Lord while chanting. That's a very important this one. So if we are not able to get focus, if we are not able to control the mind and the senses, at least to some extent, no, not fully, at least to some extent, then it's not going to be what is that? We are not going to achieve the perfection, right? So it's very important aspect here. Okay, so let's get to the next sloka, text 7. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhavah prachami tvam dharma sammudha chetah yachreyashan nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. Okay, here Arjuna is telling, now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So this is a very important turning point in Bhagavad Gita. Now we have marked it also like here, in a different color. So it's a very important turning point. Why? Because till now Arjuna and Krishna were speaking like friends. Arjuna was offering his arguments, and Krishna was like also lovingly chastising Arjuna and things like that. And he was pushing him. So, but then there was no conclusion. At the end of the discussion, Arjuna is still confused, and he's not able to get clarity in what he wants to do. And he's very nicely, he's putting it here. Karpanya dosho. No, karpanya means miserly. No, kripana means miserly. Karpanya dosho pahata swabhavaha prachami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha. So he's telling that no, I'm completely confused about my duty. No, tvam dharma. Prachami tvam dharma. So like I'm not able to understand what is my duty and have lost all composure due to miserly weakness. In this condition, like yashreyashan nishchitam bruhitan me. So shreya means like something that is well, something that is good for me. Yashreyashan nishchitam, no, like nishchit roop se, like matlab for certain, no, you tell me what is good for me. And nishchitam bruhitan me. Bruhi means like to speak, or you tell me like what is good for me. And this is most of the time, even when we are stuck in the problem, when we are stuck in difficult times, we also ask the same question, right? So my lord, like just show me the path, like what is the way out of all this problem. Just show me a clear indication, what's going to happen, or how I'm supposed to handle myself, and why I'm going through this problem. Just give me a little bit of clarity of what's happening. So, but then the problem is Lord never gives clarity. So if we were to be, it's like, we always say, right, the yogis, they want to secure the power in their hand. And they want to say, okay, fine, no, they go to the Lord and say, you give me the siddhis, you give me the powers and things like that. I'll take care of myself, right? So I've just come to you so that you'll give me something. No, just you just give me, and you get out of my way. No, I will handle myself. So it's something of that sort. No, Krishna is our well-wisher. Krishna is our guide. Krishna is our dear friend, right? So it's like a small child is telling that in a busy marketplace, in a completely messy kind of a place, he's telling that, no, father, you just tell me the route. How should I go? And then I'll take care of myself. So the father knows that it is a messy place. No, you cannot handle yourself. And even if he tries to give some clarity to the child, it's a waste of time and waste of energy. It's it's not possible to get a proper route over there, right? So it has to be navigated at every step. We need some help and guidance and things like that. And it's actually foolish to ask Krishna that you just give me some clarity, I will take care of myself. We should always ask Krishna that, no, even if there is some clear path ahead of me, I am not sure what's going to happen in the future. No, you be there as my guide all the time. No, I don't want any clarity. I don't want anything to know from what's there ahead of my life. No, I just want you. No, I just want you to be there as a guide for me all the time. Right. So please be there by my side. So always please take care of me and things like that. So that's a very nice way to put. So, but anyways, Arjuna here is confused and he is telling that Nishchitam Bruhitanme, please give me a clear indication of what's going to happen. And that's something that, it's never possible. It's never possible. Anyways, so we'll, this is the general way that we pray, when we are in great distress and in great anxiety and things like that. So, but then if we have Krishna by the side, so we should not have anxiety. No, like till the time we think that we have to handle the situation, there is anxiety. And the moment we think that no, I'm not going to handle the situation, Krishna is going to handle. He's going to give me intelligence at every step, and I'm going to do what he is going to guide. So why should I have the tension? Why should I have the anxiety in my head? Right. So that's the this one. So it's a very, very amazing state of existence. Okay. So now let's see purport. By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step, there is perplexity, and therefore, it behooves one to approach a spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. All Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life, which happens without our desire. Hmm. So it's like these perplexities of life, these confusions, these uh, like dead end or roadblocks and things like that. All these things come, by its nature's own course of action, and it is not possible for us to stop them. It is not possible for us to do anything about them. So we need to have spiritual guidance. We need to approach a bona fide spiritual master, and by their advice and by their guidance, so we can actually get out of this problems of life, and um, we can have a clear vision, in that sense, not like no clear vision forever, and then not to have any support from the no the spiritual master or Krishna. It's not like that. Clear vision on the condition of being surrendered to a spiritual master and Krishna, and by following their instructions, we can actually have a clarity. And even though things are messy in front of us, so still we know that Krishna is going to clear up this, and Krishna is going to make me walk this path. So I don't need to have any tension. We don't need to demand that you show me a clear path. No, even if there is mess in front of us, still we'll be able to go through, by the mercy of the Lord, right? So in that way, like that kind of a clarity of thought, that kind of a clarity of vision, so can be attained by the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Okay. Okay, so these perplexities of life, which happens without our desire. So it's not possible that I conduct myself in a nice way and then I'll not be caught up in any perplexities of life. No, it's not possible. We must go through, because it is Dukalayam, and we must have the problems of life in front of us. Okay, they are like a forest fire that somehow blazes without being set by anyone. Similarly, this is the perplexities of life. No, they are like the forest fire. It somehow comes. No, there nobody can explain any logic. Nobody can give any reasoning why it is happening. It just happens. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. No one wants fire, yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the signs of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who is in the disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not therefore remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. This is the purport of this verse. Right? So, Shishyasteham Shadimam Fam Prapannam. So here Arjuna is telling that, no, I surrender unto you, Krishna. I just, no, I please accept me as your disciple. Enough of my arguments. Now I'm not going to argue anymore with you. So I'm just going to follow you. So I'm surrendering unto you. No, Krishna, Arjuna is actually putting forward himself like that. Okay. So who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. In Brahat Aranyaka Upanishad 3.8.10, the perplexed man is described as follows. Yova etad aksharam grahi avidit vasmal lokat parathi sa kripanaha. He is a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as human, and who thus quits this world like cats and dogs, without understanding the science of self-realization. So this is a very important point to understand. Many times when people come to us, they ask us, no, this is the problem that we are facing. And if we give a spiritual solution, they'll say, okay, spiritual solution, let's keep it by the side. No, let's have some immediate solution for this problem. Let's, no, can't we have some immediate solution for this problem? So then, no, we say, okay, fine, even if we have an immediate solution, but then it's not going to solve the problem. The problem is going to come back in another way. No, so why to go for a quick fix solution? An intelligent man would say, okay, even if I have to suffer a little more, let me have a permanent solution, right? So why to shift from one temporary solution to another temporary solution? So such a person is called a miserly person. No, miserly person, he is feeling very, very dull and weak. No, that he doesn't want to take the ultimate solution of self-realization. He will always take some shortcut, and he will always keep suffering. One shortcut to another shortcut to another shortcut, and there is no end to it. And he's going to suffer again and again and again. No, and Prabhupada nicely puts this one of cats and dogs. If you see, if somebody throws a stone at certain place, and the dog will just move a little bit and then he'll again sleep. Now, he will not think that, okay, this is not a very good thing. No, this is not a very good this one. So I should find a permanent solution for this. He will never think of any permanent solution. He will only adjust a little bit and then continue with his doggish activities. So human beings also have come to that platform. They just adjust a little bit and then again get into the same doggish kind of activities, right? So that's the problem. Such people are called kripana. So that's why this definition Prabhupada is giving, because Arjuna is telling karpanya dosho pahata svabhavaha. So he actually brings in this word. No, I am acting like a kripana. I'm acting like a miserly person. I am not able to see Shreya. No, Shreya Shan Nishtitam Bruhitanme. I'm not able to see the Shreya. No, that is long-term benefit. I am just thinking about very, very short-time benefits, and then I'm completely confused. And so many conflicting kind of things are coming in my mind. I'm not able to see one solid reason and one solid course of action, which I can just pursue. It's becoming very difficult. So that's when Arjuna decides that I have come into a miserly weakness and I'm not in clarity. Okay, so let's continue the purport. This human form of life is most valuable asset for the living entity who can utilize it for solving the problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity properly is a miser. No, this human form of life is like, no, you're given a blank check. You can fill any amount. And you just say that, no, I want to withdraw probably 10 rupees. No, then it is called as a miser, or one who doesn't know the value of what he has got. So this human form of life is quite valuable. No, it is possible for us to attain liberation. It is possible for us to attain freedom from the clutches of the material existence, and then we use it for simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Something which even the animals do, right? So that's the main problem, right? Okay. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity properly is a miser. On the other hand, there is the Brahmana. Opposite of Kripana is a Brahmana, or he who is intelligent enough to utilize this body to solve all the problems of life. Ya etad aksharam grahi vidit smal lokat para iti sa Brahmana. So this is exactly the opposite definition. So one who uses this body for solving the problems of life. You know, the Kripanas or miserly persons waste their time in being overly affectionate for family, society, country, etc. in material conception of life. One is often attached to family life, namely to wife, children, and other members on the basis of skin disease. That's very nicely put. Skin disease. Sometimes Prabhupada says that there are so many people around in this world, but we have affection to one set of people, who's my wife or a husband or a child and things like that. So this is basically called a skin disease, right? So the Kripana thinks that he is able to protect his family members from death, or the Kripana thinks that his family or society can save him from the verge of death. Such family attachment can be found even in the lower animals who take care of children also. Being intelligent, Arjuna could understand that his affection for family members and his wish to protect them from death were the causes of his perplexities. Although he could understand that his duty to fight was awaiting him, still on the account of miserly weakness, he could not discharge the duties. He is therefore asking Lord Krishna, the Supreme Spiritual Master, to make a definite solution. He offers himself to Krishna as a disciple. He wants to stop friendly talks. Talks between the master and the disciple are serious, and now Arjuna wants to talk very seriously before the recognized spiritual master. Krishna is therefore the original spiritual master of the science of Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna is the first disciple for understanding the Gita. How Arjuna understands the Bhagavad Gita is stated in Gita itself, and yet foolish mundane scholars explain that one need not submit to Krishna as a person, but to unborn within Krishna. There is no difference between Krishna's within and without. And one who has no sense of this understanding is the greatest fool in trying to understand Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada nicely puts that here in this particular aspect, we see that to understand the signs of the spiritual aspects, Arjuna is actually submitting himself as a disciple to Krishna. And it's a very, very important aspect. No one has to submit himself as a disciple. And there are Mayavadis, they say that, oh, Krishna, there is nothing called Krishna. Like, no, you have to surrender to that Paramatma within Krishna or something like that. Some weird concepts they tell. So all Atma is same and stuff like that and all. And they say like, no, why to take shelter of Krishna? Why to even, no, you have the Bhagavad Gita, understand and do something. So, but that's foolish. No, Bhagavad Gita itself says that Arjuna surrendered to Krishna. So then, if somebody says that I don't need to surrender to a spiritual master and I'll just figure out everything of myself, so that's like completely useless thing, right? So there is a question: why is it said that Earth is meant only for soul realization? Yeah, because it is meant only for soul realization. Otherwise, even the cats and dogs and other living entities are also doing other activities. So its primary job is to self-realization. Otherwise, there is no point in the whole life. It is mentioned. Dharma swanishtita pumsha vishwakshena katashya nothadaye dediratim shrameyevihi kevalam. If we don't develop the self-realization, our whole life is considered to be shrama evahi kevalam. It is just no, just a hard labor that is taken, and just we have just lived a life like cats and dogs, where we have just worried about how to fill our belly and then know how to get my sense gratification. And one day I just die. And what's the spiritual progress that I have made? What's the progress that I've made to get out of this world? Nothing. No. So then it's a problem. So if any devotee who performs bhakti yoga but does not complete in this lifetime will go to higher planets. No, that will come in the future. We will see in Bhagavad Gita itself, Arjuna asks that particular thing. From Tapaloka directly with bhakti yoga, why he cannot go to God at Krishna? Why he has to take birth again in Earth? It is possible for people to go back from the higher planets like Janaloka, Tapaloka, and all. But then it is mentioned that it's very difficult also there because there is so much of peace and so much of comfort and things like that is there. A person may not get the desire to go out of the material world. It's like in a prison, if somebody is getting good food and nice friends are there and everybody is good and whole environment is good and all. So then the prisoner thinks that no, why to get out of the prison at all? No, let me just stay in the prison. So that's the effect that is there in the higher planetary system. So Earth is a good place where if you try to settle a little bit, immediately you will get beatings. Immediately you'll get some push from some different directions, and you can actually become serious in Krishna consciousness. So in the higher planetary systems, you may become settled, and you will not have sufficient miseries to poke you, to progress in Krishna consciousness. So that's why this earthly planet is considered to be very good. Even the residents of heavenly planets, even the residents of Janaloka, Tapaloka, they they are eager to take birth on this earthly planet so that their destination to the spiritual world is guaranteed. They can, if they practice here, it's quite easier, and it's quite good for remembering the Lord. Sufficient miseries are there, so that's the impetus for them to come to the earthly planet. Okay, text 8. Nahi prapashyami mamapunudyad yachokhamuchoshanamindriyanam avapya bhuma vasapatnam raddham rajyam suranam apichadipatyam. I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. Okay. Although Arjuna was putting forward so many arguments based on knowledge of principles of religion and moral codes, it appears that he was unable to solve this real problem without the help of the spiritual master Lord Sri Krishna. He could understand that his so-called knowledge was useless in driving away his problems, which were drying up his whole existence, and it was impossible for him to solve the perplexities without the help of a spiritual master like Lord Krishna. It's a very important aspect. Knowledge means happiness. We cannot have a knowledge that is putting us in so much of misery. Knowledge means happiness. Knowledge should result in happiness. Knowledge should result in illumination, happiness, peace, and stuff like that. So that's the meaning of knowledge. Any knowledge that is giving us more and more anxiety and problems, no, that's considered to be ajnana. That's not jnana. So, like for example, all the knowledge that we have learned in the schools and colleges, so now the very same knowledge is cause of our misery, right? So, like we have to go through a lot of misery just because of that knowledge. And here, Arjuna thinks that he is in knowledge, and but then he is miserable. So how can a person in knowledge be miserable? It is not possible, right? It is completely an illogical statement. So that means whatever the Arjuna was quoting, the Dharma Shastra, Artha Shastra, all the moral codes and things like that, essentially it is all ajnana, because he is not able to get the ultimate result of happiness, right? So it is very important that knowledge means happiness and illumination. That's the sign of knowledge. So, and here we see that Arjuna is not able to come to that end. So that means all his knowledge is not actually knowledge, right? Okay, let's continue the purport. Academic knowledge, scholarship, high position, etc., are all useless in solving the problems of life. Help can be given only by a spiritual master like Krishna. Therefore, the conclusion is that a spiritual master who is 100% Krishna conscious is the bona fide spiritual master, for he can solve the problems of life. Lord Chaitanya said that one who is a master in the science of Krishna consciousness, regardless of his social position, is the real spiritual master. Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kenanai Ek Jai Krishna Tattva Vitha Say Guru Hai. It does not matter whether a person is a Vipra, a learned scholar in Vedic wisdom, or is born in a lower family, or is in the renounced order of life. If he is a master in the science of Krishna, he is the perfect and bona fide spiritual master. So, without being a master in the science of Krishna consciousness, no one is a bona fide spiritual master. It is also said in the Vedic literatures, Shat Karma Nipuno Vipro, Mantra Tantra Visharadaha, Avaishnavo Guru Nasyad, Vaishnava Swapacho Guru. So it says that Shat Karma, like there are different kinds of this one Vedic, no, this ones are there, karmas are there. Shat karma means like 6 different kinds of karma. Nipuno Vipro. One may be like very, very expert in all of them, right? And mantra tantra visharadaha. So like even if they are very, very learned in all the mantras and tantras, if he's Avaishnava Guru na Shyad. So Avaishnava, a non-devotee of the Lord, cannot become a guru, right? On the other hand, Vaishnavaha Swapacho Guruhu, if a Vaishnava comes from the family of a dog eater, Swapacho means like no one who's a dog eater is called Swapacha. So Swapacho Guruhu. So even if a person's birth and the background is not proper, but if he has become a nice devotee of the Lord, then he should be accepted as a guru, right? So that's the verdict of the scriptures. Let's see the translation of this. A scholarly Brahmana, expert in all subjects of Vedic knowledge, that Shad Darshan is there. Yeah, so that's Shad Karma is mentioned here. And all objects of Vedic knowledge is unfit to become a spiritual master without being a Vaishnava or expert in science of Krishna consciousness. But a person born in a family of a low caste can become a spiritual master if he is a Vaishnava or Krishna conscious. It's a very nice way it is put. And here for Arjuna, like that's not a problem because Krishna himself is there in front of him. So the problems of material existence, that is birth, old age, disease, and death, cannot be counteracted by accumulation of wealth and economic development. In many parts of the world, there are states which are replete with all facilities of life, which are full of wealth and economically developed. Yet the problems of material existence are still present. They are seeking peace in different ways, but they can achieve real happiness only if they consult Krishna or the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which constitute the signs of Krishna, through the bona fide representative of Krishna, the man in Krishna consciousness. So this is the main problem. So we may try to solve our problems with material ways, but here Prabhupada is citing there are many countries in this world where all the necessary material facilities are there in abundance. but still they are also into trouble. They are also into misery. They are also into anxiety. So then we should, anyone who's intelligent will say that, okay, what's the point of any amount of material adjustments? I can never become happy. I can never ever become happy. Until unless we are Krishna conscious, we can never become happy. It's a very, very deep statement. We should try to ponder about it. Constantly, the mind will keep offering us some solution, saying that, no, you just get this one material thing done, you will be happy. No, after that, you can do Krishna consciousness with full force. So, but that is the problem. No, that's where the material nature tricks. No, it always says one more time, just this one material thing you achieve, and everything will be solved. After that, you will not have any more desires. It is not possible. It's like the example that is given to it is the itch. When we have itch in the body, so the itching sensation, it's like it is asking and demanding us, just one time you scratch this itch, that's it. No, you'll feel very nice, and you don't need to scratch that any like after that. So if I just start scratching it one time, then the itch becomes more, and then I would like to scratch it again, and then I would like to scratch it again, and finally what happens is blood comes. No, finally it becomes an injury. No, it becomes a more deeper, injury. And another example that is given is no, fire and the fuel. So the fire is demanding fuel. No, you just give me a little more fuel to burn. No, I will be satisfied. I will, no, I'll completely give it up. So, but then the fire, the more fuel you supply, the more it becomes greedy for more fuel, right? So that's how the forest fire happens. It just happens very, very small, and then no, it catches on to the other dry woods and things like that, and then it becomes so voluminous and so huge, and it just consumes everything. No, the fire can never be solved by supplying fuel. So in the same way, the material problems cannot be solved by supplying more material facilities. More material facilities means more fuel, more the problem will burn like a forest fire, right? So we have to take up to Krishna consciousness. We have to see that how nicely I'm able to focus myself on the holy names of the Lord, how nicely I'm able to focus myself on the subject of Krishna. And if more I think of Krishna, more it is liberation, liberation from the problems of this life. No? Uh, to solve the problems of the life on the material plane is foolishness, and we should just give it up, and then we should try to take up to Krishna consciousness, where we can solve the problems once for all, right? Once for all. That's a very important thing. No, let's do things for once for all, not just patch up solution and again cry and again cry and again cry, right? Okay, if economic development and material comforts could drive away one's lamentations of family, social, national, or international inabilities, then Arjuna would not have said that even an unrivaled kingdom on earth or supremacy like that of demigods in the heavenly planets would be unable to drive away his lamentations. He sought, therefore, refuge in Krishna consciousness, and that is the right path for peace and harmony. Economic development or supremacy over the world can be finished at any moment by the cataclysms of material nature. Cataclysms. This is a nice word. Let's see. Cataclysm means a large scale and violent event in the natural world. Sudden violent upheaval, especially in the political or social context. Cataclysm of the First World War. Okay. Such economic development or supremacy over the world can be finished at any moment by the cataclysms of material nature. Now, right now, also we are going through some problems like that. So now we see that we can have supremacy over the world, but then one small virus or one small tsunami or one small war can finish all the peace and prosperity of the world, right? So even elevation into higher planetary situation, as men are now seeking on the moon planet, can also be finished at one stroke. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this. Kshine punya mritilokam vishanti. When the results of pious activities are finished, one falls down again from the peak of happiness to the lowest status of life. So this is also very important. Kshine punya mritilokam vishanti. So even if we are enjoying some happiness, we should know that I am just reaping the benefit of my good karma any time, any moment, without any notice. It may just get over. and I'll again fall back into lower status of life. And if I'm going through a difficult patch of time, it will also come to an end. No, it's not going to continue forever. So, like that's why Krishna mentions in the second chapter, in a short while we will see Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya Sitoshana Sukha Dukkada Agamapayano Anitya Stham Titikshvasva Bharata. He says that, just tolerate this. Sometimes happiness comes, sometimes distress comes. If you keep worrying about these things, you'll never be able to focus on something higher. No, just tolerate it, forget about it. Right. So it's the nature of this world. Right. So if we put a lot of focus on that, we will never be able to be peaceful and focus on our higher objectives in the life. Right. Okay. Many politicians of the world have fallen down in that way. Such downfalls only constitute more causes for lamentation. Therefore, if we want to curb lamentation for good, then we have to take shelter of Krishna as Arjuna is seeking to do. So Arjuna asks Krishna to solve the problems definitely, and that is the way of Krishna consciousness. Okay. Hmm. There is a question, is it possible to balance emotions with reasoning always? Why both the emotions and reasoning is part of me? Yeah, both are there. The emotions are meant for applying it in the devotional service of the Lord. And if we apply the emotions on the material side, then it's a problem. No, that emotions will engulf us. So the same emotion we can actually apply it to the Lord. That saying, oh, like, no, you're so merciful and you have been tolerating me for so many lifetimes, but I have never taken up to your devotional service. And, like, please accept me and things like that. We can actually have a nice emotional dealings with Krishna. And reasoning is needed for the material world. Wherever you apply logic and reasoning, you will develop a detachment towards that particular entity, right? Especially on material world, if we apply logic and reasoning, we will develop detachment. And that's exactly Krishna is going to do with Arjuna in the coming section, where Krishna is going to speak about Sankhya Yoga. He's going to speak about the truth of the body and soul, understanding which Arjuna will get detachment from the attachment of the temporary things of this world. So that's the way, like, if we want to become, if we are very much attached to eating in a particular hotel, if we want to get detached, then you should analyze the hotel, know how they are actually preparing their foodstuffs, how clean they are, and going to the meticulous details. So then we will get detachment. No, we'll say, okay, fine. No, this is like horrible. I don't want to go there, right? So in the same way, no, this material world is sufficiently obnoxious, sufficiently filthy. Just by analyzing this material world with reasoning, we will get detachment, right? And Krishna is sufficiently glorious and sufficiently, merciful and amazingly, like, he's an amazing person. Analyzing Krishna, we will develop attachment towards him. And once we develop attachment to Krishna, we can actually put the emotions over there. In fact, the highest platform of devotional service is performed with deeper emotions towards Krishna, right? So it's not, reasoning is needed to develop detachment from this world. And then reasoning is needed to develop, uh, to take the call of getting attached to Krishna. And then, the emotions, then we can actually apply the emotions there. So that's the right place to apply the emotions. Apply the emotions on Krishna. That's the highest perfection. Right. So these emotions are needed there, right? Not on the material plane. If we apply emotions on the material plane, oh, we will be like tossed here and there. No, completely we will be taken aback. Right. So that's the problem. So we should reserve the emotions for Krishna, no, not for the material things. Okay, so we will stop here for today's discussion. So we have the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita is very, very important and very deep in its content. And let's go through and analyze them nicely. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Hare Krishna.